Happy Wednesday night, Bills Mafia in the house tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the live edition of Bills Talk with Matt Parrino and Ryan Talbot, and we are joined tonight. I'm really excited about this show. We are joined tonight by two awesome Bills reporters who I've known for a while, and I got to give a special shout out to Jenna Cottrell from 13 Wham, because my respect for her grew a little bit because we spent some time together at a UFC event last year. Came out in Rochester, covered my true love, my true passion. So shout out to you. Thank you for joining me. And obviously WIVB's Heather Prusak. It's great to have you guys on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.
Ryan is down, what is it now? 45, 50 pounds?
50
wow.
pounds. I want to give him a special shout out.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
That shave job is epic. Your mile times, you share them every day on Instagram and Facebook story, and they're starting to get dangerously close to mine. So chill out there.
That's bad news for you then.
But no, it's I reached out to Heather and Jenna because we're what 2 months into this Bills podcast. We're having a lot of fun. We've had way too many male voices on this thing, and I wanted to change things up a little bit and get you guys in here. And I think where I wanted to start is how weird this offseason has been, because today we had another virtual press conference with Shawn McDermott, and it was an hour, which during the season, I mean, as we get these things going, they're usually about 15, 20 minutes, depending on, but we haven't talked to him in a while. And but I wanted to get your immediately, and we'll start with Heather, your impressions of what this offseason has been like.
Weird, very weird. I think that, doing these Zoom calls, relying on video chats and Zoom calls and things like that, it's scary because it's kind of become the norm, right? I mean, this is how we're interacting with people, even, just now. It's kind of become our normal in the media. So yeah, definitely weird. I miss seeing the players. I miss seeing the coaches. I mean, I miss seeing you guys, just having something to do and, having a reason to look presentable every day. Even, I mean, I was in a baseball cap and like a dry fit shirt for McDermott's press conference. So, even just having a reason to look presentable every day is weird not to have that. So definitely weird, but it's also nice to have the technology, in order to still stay connected and, able to do our jobs.
Yeah, 100%. I think weird is like the perfect way to put it, because this whole, working from home has been, I'm very thankful. I know I'm sure we all are, to be able to work, and that's been a huge relief, but just the technical difficulties that come with it, and like the Wi-Fi issues are just seemingly next level and not stopping anytime soon. But yeah, it's I think as reporters, we love talking to the people we cover. We love getting to, familiarize ourselves with them, building those bonds. And it's been hard not having that opportunity. Obviously, there's looking forward to on the horizon. There's the hope of training camp. Obviously, that's going to be in Buffalo. But I think, a lot of people are just looking forward to things kind of settling down and things opening back up and, things getting a little bit more back to what we're more normally used to.
Yeah, it's something that I don't think a lot of fans think about. And actually some of them do, because I get hit up all the time about, different aspects of my job and what it's like covering the team. But, I almost feel like what I've come to learn about the springtime is it gives you a much more low key environment to get to know the players, and also to get to know the ritual of the relationship, if you will. So we were talking to Lorenzo Alexander a couple weeks ago, and he said some kind words about like our interactions in the locker room, and you kind of figure out who you like talking to. This is a big part of the year where you're able to build those relationships. And so now it's going to be, we're going to get the training camp, and it's going to be like this mad dash to the season, and we're going to have to try to fit all this in, and it's going to be craziness. And I think a lot of years you'd have a lot of room to tell a lot of different stories, but you're going to have to prioritize now more than ever.
Yeah, it's so hard because, like you said, this is the time where it's a lot less pressure. It's a lot less stressful situation because obviously training camp, you've got guys fighting for roster spots. So that's very stressful on them. Then during the season, they're obviously trying to get ready for the next game. So there's not really a whole lot of time for just the, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? You got kids, blah, 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 things like that. The kind of small talk aspect of it is really when it happens. So I think that it's a huge aspect that you're missing right now.
And I think like with the rookies, I feel like this is the time to really introduce yourself to them, and not having that opportunity is challenging for sure.
Ryan, what's been the biggest difference for you this offseason?
I was just going to say with that first question was, I'm listening to McDermott's presser today, and I'm helping my daughter do her ELA homework at the same time. So that's something that I definitely would not have been able to do in the past while my son's running around like a maniac. So it's just been bizarre, just very bizarre.
If you're listening, thank you so much for joining us. I see the chat's filling up here a little bit. My name is Matt Parrino. This is Bills Talk with Matt Parrino and my tag team partner, Ryan Talbot. We're joined tonight by WIVB's Heather Prusak in Buffalo and Rochester's 13 Whams, Jenna Cottrell. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, we're going to do kind of like a rapid fire style at the end, but we'll discuss certain things throughout the course of the show. And one question that pops up here is, do you guys think that we're going to have fans at the games? And it's, we're going to talk a little bit about training camp and the fact that it's going to be at One Bills Drive and not in Rochester in a little while. But as we kind of look to, the horizon and what this looks like, I mean, my initial impression is I think we're going to have some type of fan presence at games. I don't know how much, I don't know what that level of safety will be, but I'm encouraged by what's happening not only in Western New York and Erie County and New York State, but around the country. Now we have some runway now with all of the protests to see what kind of results are going to come out of everybody kind of gathering over the course of the last week. And if there's any, waves or second and third waves that happen, but I'm bullish on them having at least some fan presence.
Yeah. I think that there are going to be fans. I don't think that, and I know that, people aren't going to want to hear this, but I don't think to start the season, it's going to be full capacity like what we would all want. I do think there's going to be some, trying to abide by social distancing rules. I mean, you just look at all of the big events that have been canceled, into August and even in the early stages of the fall. That's kind of what makes me think that it's not going to be full capacity, but I'm hopeful that as the season goes along, we can get there.
Yeah, I first of all don't know why my mic is making. Does that sound better?
You it sounds.
Hang on.
I don't know why it's doing that. Is it better now?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. I thought it was making weird noises. Maybe not.
No, we got you.
It's just me. Don't worry about it. No, I hate to say this, but I really do worry that there won't be fans. And I say this only because it just seems like, there's so much going on. And as things start to open up, I think there's hope that there will be that aspect. But I just think, I don't know. Obviously, Bills Mafia is very passionate, beloved. But I don't know how many people are going to want to expose themselves to going to a game, because it's not just going to the game, it's getting into the game, it's waiting in line, it's going to the bathroom, using all of those things that go into it. And I feel like a lot of people, they want to go, but I don't know if this is the best environment for that. I would like to see there be fans. Obviously, what is football without the fans? It's a huge, huge aspect of the game, especially, home field advantage. But at the same point, I'm hesitant to say that there will be fans, and even maybe fans at a certain capacity. I don't know. I guess I'm setting my expectations low so that can be cleared, and hopefully that would be the case.
There's just so many things up in the air right now. It's hard to even guess at this point, really.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And I'm kind of in that same camp where I think in the beginning of the year, I don't think there will be fans. I just think that the Bills and the NFL as a whole, there's only so many things you can control. And the Bills can control their own lots. But what about those private lots with tailgating before games too?
Yep.
And then you're risking the spread of it there. They can have all the entrances open. They can have a limited capacity, but they can only control what they can control in that stadium. So there's just so many factors that I think in the beginning of the year, there may not be any fans in the stands.
And also, too, it's like if you did open it up, let's say they did open it up to full capacity, which I still don't think is going to happen at first. But then it's like, then you run into, okay, well, are you going to require fans to wear masks at games? Like who wants to wear a mask at a game when you're screaming and cheering for, however many hours on end? So it's like, if that was implemented, do fans really want to deal with that? So there's just so many things up in the air right now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that it's, policing the kind of mandates that are going to be in place is going to add a whole nother element to this. So if somebody takes off their masks, how do you deal with that? Is there going to be an increase in fights? I mean, we already know that's something that, at a football game, it's a very rambunctious crowd, but I think it's going to be interesting to watch how the preseason plays out, because I think they're going to be able to kind of test what this thing looks like without fans, and then maybe figure out, okay, let's hit the brakes here because this is not how we want to execute our season. And let's maybe push the season back. I know that they want to get this thing going, but I think the NFL has the luxury of kind of playing the waiting game, because whenever they're going to come out and play, people are going to watch it. So, I mean, if you had to push back even to start in November, if we're looking at a completely different society at that point and where we are in terms of coronavirus, I think then you have a chance to at least keep the integrity of the game, because I also am concerned about what this, is this going to be a season that in all of these sports where there's going to be asterisks put on everything because the game changes? I mean, crowds are a big part of what happens in an NFL football game.
To me, I think the biggest thing too is, I mean, obviously we all want to see fans there. Fans want to be there. It's a huge part of the game. But to me, I think the biggest thing is being able to start on time and have a full season without it being interrupted, because you're already seeing the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, they've had to shorten seasons, make adjustments, postponements, all that stuff. But the NFL has the benefit of, because they don't start until August with preseason and then September for the regular season, they have that benefit of possibly being able to play out a full season without those interruptions. So even if there aren't fans, I think that would be, just getting through the season would be huge in itself.
Yeah. Switching gears here a little bit. Thank you for joining us. You're watching our Wednesday Night Live podcast. Jenna Cottrell, Heather Prusak, nice enough to join us today for a nice conversation. And we actually have some stuff to talk about with Shawn McDermott's presser today. But before we get to it, I want to give people a little idea of how you guys arrived at the place that you are at now, because I recently connected with Marcel Louis-Jacques from ESPN, and we did a podcast on our careers and how we made it here. And I think that not only do fans want to know about that, but other people that are coming up in the profession want to know it. So let's start with Jenna. What did you do to kind of build to this point to where that landed you at your current job?
So, like Heather, I went to Syracuse University. I'm a year ahead of Heather in terms of graduating, but Heather was smart and she worked at the student TV station. I did not, because I was focused on other things, which hindsight, I guess it worked out okay. But, first year out of college, I was like, wow, I probably should have applied myself a little more, but that happens. But no, I had internships along the way over the summers. And I think that was huge, definitely. But originally out of college, I got my first job in Elmira, New York, the southern tier of New York. And it was a whole new experience for me. I'd never lived, other than going to school at Syracuse, in a different city than my parents. And, I moved out and I got to work. It was a small ABC CBS station, and I was originally a sports reporter there. And then when my boss got a job, they moved me up to sports director. And it was just a really great experience. Like, I really needed the time to practice because I didn't do that at school. So it was really helpful because Elmira was so welcoming. I covered so much high school and high school sports. And that to me was huge because, you know, you are directly meeting all these coaches, all these players, talking to the parents, talking to everyone. And I think it kind of allowed me the opportunity to honestly to make mistakes and to learn from them and to grow from them. And then from there, actually the huge event in that area is NASCAR because of Watkins Glen International, the track down there. So I got to cover NASCAR, and it was something that I never expected to like, I never watched it really growing up. And it was an incredible experience. And, you know, I basically felt like they were paying me like pennies on the dollar, but it was like free grad school because of the experience that I had. And then from there, in 2016, I got hired at 13 Wham in Rochester. And, originally I was a sports reporter. And then this past year, someone left, so I was moved up to weekend sports anchor. But it's just been really fun. Like I really enjoy covering the teams that we get to cover, and I like, especially, I mean, just getting to cover the Bills like we do in a smaller market, I think means so much more because it means so much more to the people in the community. So it's just been a really fun ride, and like I'm sure I feel exactly like you guys. It's a really fun job. Obviously there's challenges, but at the end of the day, we're getting to cover something that means so much to so many people. And it's just, you know, how can you not feel grateful for that?
Yeah. So as Jenna mentioned, I went to Syracuse, and when I was there, I was the sports.
What?
Oh wait, sorry, I gotta go do something, Matt. See you later. I actually have an appointment. No, I'm just kidding. So I went to Syracuse. I was the sports director of our student-run TV station, and then I also was on the sports staff at WAER Radio, where it's an NPR station, but the sports department is student-run. They broadcast play-by-play all of the men's basketball, lacrosse, and then all the football games. So I was on the staff, did a little bit of sideline reporting, hosted in-game stuff. So it kind of felt like I was in the industry before I was in the industry. The experience was so great because, you know, being sports director, even though it was a student TV station, I mean, I was learning, you know, just even simple things like reaching out to PR people, you know, SIDs of college teams, different things, sending in credentials. I mean, now when we talk about it, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but when you're a student, like those little things matter when you get into the real world. So just, you know, things like that, traveling to games, covering games, even just, you know, like where to park when you go, you know, navigating your way around arenas and stadiums and, you know, different things like that. So it was really cool. I got such great experience there. And then when I was in college, I interned with the Bisons because I'm from here, from Buffalo, from Hamburg. So when I was home for the summers, I interned with the Bisons. And then I also interned with Channel 2 here in Buffalo. And that was summer going into my senior year of college. And, you know, I kind of just kept in touch with all of the guys, my news director, the sports guys. So I graduated in May of 2014. And a couple months later, after applying for basically every single job under the sun, in markets that in cities that I've never even heard of before. One of my friends had seen that there was a part-time, it was called a high school sports content producer at Channel 2. So I reached out, you know, whatever. I took the job because I thought, you know, maybe I could just do this while I look for something more permanent. And I lived at home with my dad. I was working 30 hours a week. Well, I was getting paid for 30 hours a week. I was pretty much working more than that. Was part-time, wasn't on air, but I figured, you know what, like they know me, they know what my, goals are. So if I can work my way up and show them that I can do these tasks, hopefully it'll pay off. So little by little, they kind of let me do more and more. So it was like, I got to do this like minute segment of top 3 high school plays of the week. So I got to like do that. And then I got to do little features on, you know, some high school players in the area. And then slowly it progressed. And then I got promoted to full-time. And then I, got a trial run at anchoring, did like so many practice anchorings, shows up leading up to it. And then eventually I kind of just worked my way up where it was like, became full-time. Then I got a contract. And then our weekend anchor left. So then I was promoted to weekend anchor. And then this past April, I moved over to Channel 4. So now I'm with Josh Reed and those guys, and it's not so glamorous in the beginning. Living at home for a couple years. I think I was still working part-time at American Eagle, trying to make up the rest of the money. So not glamorous at all, but here we are.
What's that like? Because from the outside looking in, and obviously Ryan and I are kind of more in print type jobs. Like, what's it like to go from one station to the other in the same market? Is there any awkwardness?
I mean, honestly, at first, 100%, like when I was going through the process, in March, it was very awkward in the beginning, having those conversations that you're leaving and then, keeping things a secret and blah, 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 and whatever. So definitely a little bit of that, but, overall, I think a lot of people on both sides have been very supportive. And so I'm thankful for that. Obviously, I'll kind of know more of that feeling when we actually start to see people in person, because, right now it's just over Zoom calls and all this. So I haven't really, seen people. But overall, I think a lot of people were very supportive, and I was really thankful for that.
Well, we have a lot of really talented people in the TV side of things and on our side of things in the market. And so you really can't go wrong wherever you're at. I mean, Josh Reed is obviously become a good friend of mine, but Matt Beauvais is a good friend of mine, and Adam does a great job at Channel 2. So we're really lucky to have, I tell people this all the time, that the media community in Buffalo is really unique in that there's so much talent and there's so much competition, but there's also so much respect. Like that's one thing that I didn't expect, because I was coming from the league side of things with the UFC. So I didn't have to really wade into the waters with the media as much.
Yeah.
And so coming here, one of the things I was like, oh man, like everybody was kind of putting on a good face early. And I was like, okay, when are the gloves going to come off? And they never really came off. And I was like, okay, this is just how it is. And so I'm like, it's great, because like working for the UFC, being at events in New York and LA and seeing how those kind of media dynamics can be, it could get really, so like you guys, like I think it was Jenna that mentioned this earlier, we're really lucky to have these jobs. We're also really lucky to have the group of people that we have. And that's my alarm. We gotta give my dog some medicine, but let's get to some Bills.
I'm going to turn on my light really quick so I don't look like I'm in a cave. Hang on.
Go ahead. So we're going to get into our Bills centric part of the show here. And it's funny, when we booked this interview, I think it was like 2 weeks ago now, I really was just going to focus it mostly on, career stuff and just kind of catching up. And we didn't really have a lot. We've covered this thing so crazily intensely over the last couple months. There really wasn't a lot to talk about, but then no camp in Rochester. And now Sean's presser today, we have some stuff to dive into. Let's start with Rochester, because I tweeted it out when the news became official that I'm pretty sad. I'm glad to be home, especially in this time with, the kids being at home and all this kind of stuff, to not have to go and spend overnights at Rochester. But I thought that was a really cool experience to get a chance to not only be around the players and the team every day, but also, get indoctrinated into the culture, our media culture and all that kind of stuff. So let's start with you, Jenna. Reactions. What's the temperature in Rochester? How much sadness and disappointment is there?
I think there's definitely a lot of sadness. And I think it starts with the fans, considering the fact that training camp is such a great way to literally see like up close and personal some of these guys. Some people can't afford tickets to the game. They're expensive, or they're in the stands. They're not on the field, but training camp, it's like free. If like, I don't even know, it's cheap. And so the fact that fans normally could be right up against the guys that they've always wanted to meet, that's definitely disappointing. Now, I don't even know if fans were going to be allowed to be at Fisher. We don't know, but I think it is just sad because, first of all, I drive an hour and a half usually to Buffalo, and Fisher is 6 minutes away from my house. So selfishly, I'm sad that I'm going to be commuting that much. But at the same point, I think I really loved having everything at Fisher because the players were away too. And they could, I feel like it was really important to Shawn McDermott to have that of the guys living together and having that bonding experience. And then at the same time too, I think it's just, it makes me sad because I mean, I work in Rochester. I work at a Rochester. When I tell the guys, hey, I work at a Rochester, a lot of them are like, I don't know what the hell that, like, they don't really know because they're not from the area. So I always love being like, hey, I work here. This is Rochester. So that was definitely disappointing, but I'm hopeful that they'll come back in 2021 and all that.
I apologize, Jenna, because John's behind me trying to help my god awful webcam issues. So I go from like looking like I'm in a cave without the light on to now I'm like blown out. So I apologize that my webcam looks so bad. But and then Otto comes in. But going off of what Jenna said, yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. I mean, so we're the exact opposite. So while Fisher is like 6 minutes from her, my townhouse in Orchard Park is like probably not even 5 minutes from the stadium. So for selfish reasons for driving, it's better for me. But at the same time, like, kind of like what we're talking about, or Shawn was talking about with the players and it building chemistry and camaraderie amongst the team. I think with the media, it does the same thing because, we're all up there. A lot of us from Buffalo stay there when we're covering back-to-back days or, weeks on end or, the whole thing. And, I know like a lot of the guys go golfing and, we all get dinner and hang out, after practices and things like that. So from that standpoint, it's disappointing because like, that's something that I really enjoyed was just, having that kind of laid back time after practices to hang out and stuff.
So true.
It's funny. John texted me after I shouted out all three sports directors here, and he's like, "You're gonna shout out everybody and not me." I had a fun John Scott joke for later in the show, and now I'm not gonna say it because
just tell him that it's not about you.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. You've had your time. Not about you.
You ruined the lighting situation.
But he can bring back Otto.
Yes, Otto. Yeah. I will make sure Otto comes back. In my defense, I did try to use his iPad because it's better quality picture, and for whatever reason, Facebook didn't recognize my password, so I couldn't sign in. So I apologize again for the way that this looks. But hey, I'm here.
John's my guy, John Scott TV. I'll give him the shout out. He's been on the show a couple times. I got to say, though, it's only been 30 minutes, and Heather's already surpassed all of the elite level that John gained over the course of his show. So kudos to you there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you got to see Otto. What more do you need?
So let's move on to Shawn McDermott because we're cruising along here, and there's still a lot I want to get to today. And so I asked all three of you to come up with, your big takeaway, and we'll just kind of round table this, talk a little bit about today, because like I said, Shawn went for an hour, so he really dove into a lot. But Heather, your takeaway, why don't you hit yours, and we're all kind of, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, almost kind of going in chronological order, but the thing that stood out to me, just like, in the country right now, and a lot of players and coaches are speaking out about the racial injustices and the protests that are happening throughout the country in the wake of George Floyd's death. And that was a big topic with Shawn today. That was something that we, reporters asked him about question after question, and he spent, a lengthy time, I think, talking about each one of them. And I'm really glad that was a big topic, not only just throughout the interview as a whole, but like the fact that, those were some of the first things that we were talking about with him because, we kind of talk about the whole stick to sports thing. And now is not the time to stick to sports, in my opinion. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but there's just so many things happening throughout the country and so many things that need to change in this country. And I think that it was just important to hear from him, hear how he's addressing it with the team. And just, the fact that I think the biggest thing to me and was, he said he's really trying to open himself up to the team and to players for them to know that they can come talk to him, but also because he wants to listen and wants to educate himself on what's going on. Because just like me, I'm never going to understand what, what African Americans are going through in this country and what they face and how they feel. I'll never understand that pain. And, neither will Shawn McDermott or, anyone like that. And so for him to come out and say, I'm trying to listen, I am listening. I'm curious to see, maybe if that evolves into the team doing something more, being active in the community when they get back, or taking more steps. I'd like to see maybe what they do to actively fight against what's going on in this country right now. But I did think it was very important to hear about it. And I'm trying to maybe talk to some players this week, players that would like to speak out. And, because I think it's important also to get their thoughts and their messages across, the ones that feel comfortable talking, because like I said, now is not the time, in my opinion, for us just to stick to sports.
I could not agree more. And I was impressed with McDermott making such a point about it, because I think when you actually physically listen to him talking, he's very thoughtful in the manner in which he's speaking. He wants to harp on the fact that he wants to listen. And you mentioned that, Heather, of like, my takeaway was he wants to listen, he wants to learn, and he wants to lead. He wants to have the Bills be able to have an environment like that where they can have open conversations. They can learn from one another's experiences. And then he even mentioned the fact that like the photo of, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and all the teammates down in Florida, the offense, all being together, like that is a picture that I think resonates, but that can be an example. Obviously, a locker room is so diverse. You think about it, there are different ages, different backgrounds, different means. All of the road to the NFL looks a lot different for everyone, but to have all the guys working together for a common goal, I think that shows a lot. And I just think, I thought it was important that McDermott and the Bills and the Pagulas all made a statement, because that in itself makes a statement. And I think talking about it is, there's talking about it and there's actions, but I think talking about it starts the conversation and it starts those actions. And I think that's an important step.
Yeah, I agree. Talking about it right now is the best thing that we can do right now. He could have just released a statement and that would have been fine, but I think actually coming on with the media and having the chance for him to express his thoughts, and they were very well thought out. He was very careful about what he said. I thought that was great. And you're right. I love the point where he said, that team photo from Florida, that's what America should look like. That's, we should all be united like that. So I thought it was important for him to speak his mind on that topic, and I thought he did a really nice job.
Yeah, there was a video that obviously made waves today that, Drew Brees did an interview and had some, kind of a take on the kneeling and flag situation that I think most people probably believe has been kind of covered at this point. I think that, Colin Kaepernick and those that supported him have made the stance that was being made. They've made it known why that was happening. And obviously Drew said, I don't want the flag to be, disrespected. And, I tweeted it out today and a lot of people, DM me or texted me like, oh yeah, thanks for talking about this and using your platform. But it's like, I don't necessarily think it's so much about using my platform as it is, I want people to get it right. And I want people to listen, like you were mentioning with what Shawn McDermott said. Are we trying to understand what's happening on the other side, a different viewpoint than maybe we have? And I think at times that's not happening. And to me, what Drew said, I think it's just a complete oversight. It's a complete, you're taking what a lot of people that, are your teammates and I would imagine at some point in your career called family members, what they're telling you and saying, and you're kind of just brushing it aside and going back to your own, making it about you. And that's
you're
what
making your own conclusions.
Exactly. And that's what I think, what Shawn said and what was expressed in the Pagula statement is so important. And just being there for people. Like that's what I'm trying to do. I have friends that are white, that are black, that are, all types of different people and colors and races and nationalities. And I want to support all of them. And I want to support people that aren't even my friends, because you know what? We're human beings and we just watched a man killed a week ago. And this isn't about politics. I'm not you'll follow my feed. You'll never see politics on my feed on Twitter, but this isn't a political thing. This is a human thing, and people are hurting, and I want to be there for them in any way that I can be and try to understand what's going on with them. So to your point, I think that the Bills did a good job with that, and I think that Shawn did a good job with that today.
Yeah, I agree.
And we're moving right along. I like that when we get to an end of a sentence for me, and everybody's kind of just like, "Yeah, I did my job."
We're used to like really succinct. You got a minute, if that. You know?
I mean, the thing is, I could talk, for about any of these topics for, hours, but I'm like, I understand how this works. We only got so much time, but I did want to bring that up because that certainly stood out to me, and I felt like we had to talk about it.
Yeah.
Shawn said on the call today was interesting that a lot of the rookies, and if you hear any like Beethoven-esque chords in the background, that is my daughter who will not go to sleep for some reason, but she's getting after it, and hopefully she's going to be performing at the Philharmonic sometime in the in the next few years. But Shawn said about the rookie class, like there's even some leader. You know how Shawn is, always developing the next wave of leadership. And he mentioned about the rookies and some of the leadership qualities they've shown. And that got me thinking, like, A, how are they doing that in these virtual settings? And B, I asked them, how is this impacting the rookies? And Ryan, this was one of your big takeaways from the press conference.
Yeah, Shawn McDermott mentioned that the rookies are probably going to have an uphill climb in terms of playing time, in terms of expectations for their rookie season. But they're slowly stepping up from that leadership standpoint. But when I was listening to his words about this rookie class, I was thinking, if there's ever a year for the rookie class not to have a great impact across the league, this is a great year for the Bills because, one, they traded away their first-round pick for Stephon Diggs, a player that he's not used to Buffalo's offense, but he's been in the league. It's not going to take him a long time to adjust to this offense. He knows how to play in this league. And then you look at the other picks and AJ Epineza. He doesn't have to play as a rookie because you have Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison. You have Trent Murphy, a guy that a lot of people have already written off and kind of thought that maybe he wouldn't be here this year. But I think there's a lot of value in bringing him back, especially with the way he finished the year. Zach Moss doesn't have to make a huge contribution with Devin Singletary there. And the list goes on and on. So maybe by the end of this year, maybe the rookie that has the biggest impact is kicker Tyler Bass. Who knows? He still has to beat out Hauschka. But his job's pretty simple in terms of his responsibility. Kick the ball through the uprights or on kickoffs. So I just thought that was interesting. I think the Bills are, though, in really good shape with this rookie class in terms of tempering expectations because they're not in a position where they need those guys to come out and play significant reps.
I think that's huge too when you think about it. Like these guys aren't really expected to make an immediate impact, but could you imagine putting yourself as a rookie right now? Could you imagine what must be going through their mind? Like you're trying to, it's a tough transition to the NFL anyways. Your head's spinning. We've been in quarantine. Your workouts haven't looked the same. You're trying to learn a new playbook over Zoom chats. Like I just can't even imagine. So I think, first of all, I thought it was smart of Sean McDermott to kind of temper expectations considering, but at the same point, I think it's because in reality, it's going to be hard for these guys to adjust, knowing that it is going to be an uphill climb in terms of just getting your head on straight and getting ready for everything. Like these guys haven't had any NFL practices yet, even just seeing how much bigger the guys are. And just, I can't imagine when they show up for training camp, like that's going to be an oh shit moment in my opinion. They're just like, oh, it got real.
Okay. Well, and Jenna, you just said it, kind of lowering the expectations internally. You said that was one of the things that really stood out to you from Shawn's presser too.
Yeah. I mean, so it's so funny because of course on a Zoom chat, as is tradition, we're queued up for questions. Reporters are. My question always gets taken the question before me. So classic.
I hate that.
I hate that so much. But, in my head, it's, the Bills get so much national love now. AFC East favorites. So many people are talking about the Bills, which in itself is just to see that transition as a reporter covering the team. I'm sure you guys can all agree has been a lot different over these last, couple of months. But, Shawn McDermott doesn't love to preach, hey guys, we got this. Like, we all know him. He loves that underdog card. So I was curious, how he would react to that. And just, I loved his portion of like, yeah, you don't win games in the offseason. And, if he were to win the amount of games that his roster was expected to when he first got here, it would be like 2 games considering where the roster was in terms of a rebuild. And I just thought it was interesting considering Rex Ryan said the Bills won the offseason.
Just about to say that.
And then the fact that, Shawn McDermott is saying you still got to earn it. And of course, Shawn McDermott is saying that because it's Shawn McDermott. But I did think it was interesting because it's such a different outlook that the national media now has on the team as opposed to even just a season ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very well said. I have nothing to add to that. I think that
We got him.
What's funny about the video portion of this, like, I feel like if you're doing like a podcast, like traditionally where maybe you're not looking at each other, like I think it flows better because sometimes I'll be looking at Ryan's face and it'll be like, he's sitting there and I'm like, oh, he's about to pounce on this. Like he's going to jump in on this. And I sit there like, okay, he didn't say anything. So I'm going to jump in here real quick.
No, it's so true.
No, but I think that it's interesting I think that Shawn always wants to temper expectations. If you give him the opportunity to temper expectations, he'll take it because it's just the kind of the mentality, everything's earned, 1/11th, one day at a time. Like we've all heard all the cliches, but expectations, rookies or not, is ratcheted up quite a bit right now.
Oh yeah.
And I think that really, no matter what this season looks like and what level of preparation they have, they built this thing, they built this roster and brought in the people that they brought in this offseason so that they could have the kind of continuity to where excuses are no longer really in the mix. And especially when you're talking about Josh Allen and his continuity with Brian Dable and Ken Dorsey, and now John Brown and Cole Beasley for a second year, and they're obviously going to add in Stephon Diggs. But this is an offense, and I wrote about it in my big questions that are facing the team. What are realistic expectations for this offense and the kind of jump? I said, I'm putting the bar at 25 points a game. And people were like, what? They scored 19 and a half a game last year. How can you move it up 5 points? Well, the top 10 teams in the league, top 10 offensive teams, and we're talking about mostly playoff teams, that's what they were scoring last year. And I think that this offense has been built, if Josh Allen's your guy, with the continuity that's been established, to got to go out there and score that kind of points on a consistent basis. Go ahead.
Well, and not only the continuity, but I mean, how about also the guys that they brought in? I mean, Stephon Diggs, like that's supposed to be his guy. And also too, not only is he expected to be such a big weapon for Josh Allen, and I also think that that's part of the reason why those workouts in Florida were so important because, during the pandemic when they can't be face to face like they would be if this were a normal year during these spring workouts, I think that's so important for them to start to build that rapport and that chemistry and to start gelling because they're relying on Diggs to be his guy this year, his go-to guy. And if he's not, then he's going to take a hell of a lot of attention off of guys like John Brown and Cole Beasley. And it's going to open up the offense so much more than what we've seen in past years because they haven't had a guy like that. I mean, there were so many games that I'd be talking to, our sports staff last year, and we're looking at the game matchup and we're like, what opposing defensive coordinator is looking at this offense and like shaking in his boots? Like what guy is that guy that's going to make opposing defensive coordinators just, like that, oh shit moment for them. Like, oh man, like we got to go against, blank. Like who was that guy? Now you're building an offense that, okay, well now, oh man, we got to go against Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. They've been, a dynamic duo so far this year. Like that is what they're hoping. And that's really what it should be. And then, you add in, the fact that Devin Singletary will have a year under his belt. And then you bring in Zach Moss, who hopefully can kind of be that 1-2 punch and complement each other in the running game. I think that, for this offense, I don't think it's unrealistic to put that bar at your points per game, Matt, because if Diggs is going to be that guy, and you hopefully too, a big part of this too is that he stays healthy.
Yes.
Because how many times have we seen a guy come in that we thought was going to be a big difference maker, and then he gets hurt? So you got to hope he stays healthy too. But if all goes right, that is theoretically, and then Josh Allen grows and takes another step. That is theoretically what is supposed to happen with this offense this year.
Yeah, and I think Shawn McDermott's a smart guy. Getting a little feedback there. He is the anti-Rex Ryan. We've talked about Rex saying we won the offseason, and Shawn today saying on paper we haven't won any, or maybe it's not important what's on paper. It's important with the results and the production. And on a weekly basis, I felt like Rex Ryan almost put a bullseye on Buffalo's back when he was the head coach, where he would say something, he'd put his foot in his mouth, so to speak, and Shawn McDermott doesn't want to do that. He's not going to give Bill Belichick anything in terms of motivation or Brian Flores or Adam Gase or the like. So, he's saying all the right things. He knows going into the season, though, that most of the media, I think a lot of the teams are viewing them as the favorites. But he's not going to give them anything other than that. And the national media is heaping all this praise, but you're not going to hear that from Bills themselves. They're not going to hear patting themselves on the back, so to speak.
I think for me, like the most exciting part looking at it is like you say the 25 points per game. I just look at that as like the goalpost continues to move back for Josh Allen and his team. And I think that's, how does he do with those expectations moving? Like Stephon Diggs, obviously a huge talent, a guy that's had success in the league. Not to be Debbie Downer, I get nervous considering, Stephon Diggs has to get the ball. And last year we saw Josh really struggle with the deep ball. So there's things and not having the time right now to really be in person working with one another. I'm curious how much that will, if it does affect their chemistry and what it looks like on the field. But that being said, like it's been fun to have a team where they start to build pieces and things are coming together. O-line coming back, Josh being back now. This is his third year. Things like that where you're like, wow, this is building in the process that I think we all expected. Now, will Josh be that guy that we've thought he could be? I think this is the year where I feel like it could be a Mitch Trubisky or like a Lamar Jackson. Guys who, they led their team to the playoffs, and then which way did it go? Obviously, Mitch Trubisky, no Bills fan wants that. But at the same point, I think that's why this year, first of all, they got to score more than 19 points a game. Like, you're not going to win in this league. Their schedule is a lot harder this year. And let's be real, like, who doesn't want to see more offense? So that's why I think, like Heather's point of the continuity, too, of having Daboll back, having Josh back. Like, yeah, you're adding in Diggs, but he's got the NFL pedigree. But I just think – I'm just hoping that this offense is fun. Yeah. And I think there's the pieces there for it to be. They just have to actually come together and work together.
And also, too, one last point I want to make, and then we can move on to other topics, Matt. Just the mental part of Josh Allen's game, I think, was is still such a big factor, because you heard him talk about, he kind of almost was, second guessing himself, especially on those deep balls where he would completely overthrow guys. We saw that so many times in games. And he even admitted, that he gets nervous about underthrowing it and then having it be intercepted. So, I think that the mental part of his game is just as important. Just taking that next step mentally and getting over that hurdle too, I think is huge.
Yeah, I agree.
What this offense is going to look like, even with everything we've seen in 2019 with all these new pieces and 9 new starters, it's really tough to predict. And I actually think that once we get into this, there's going to be some people with some pressure on them. I think Brian Daboll is going to have a lot of pressure on him to make sure that all of these pieces fit properly, that Stephon Diggs is getting the kind of targets that he wants while also keeping John Brown and Cole Beasley happy. And oh, by the way, you have Dawson Knox, who you're trying to build into a tight end one that's going to need his targets. And not to mention the fact that you could have a situation where Devin Singletary, Zach Moss can both be impacts in the passing game. So there's a lot of mouths to feed. That's a good thing, because you now have enough talent to kind of let guys go out there and try to eat. But like you guys mentioned, I'm talking about expectations. Like, I think that where you start with what you believe.
Dramatic pause.
You keep walking over here. Come over here. Look at everybody at home. See everybody and say hiya. Do your Randall face. Do Randall. Can you do Randall? Oh, there's Randall. Who's he? Is he from Monsters Inc? He's so scary.
Oh, Randall.
Randall. Yeah. Can you say have a good night?
Yeah.
Why don't you go to bed?
No.
Okay, no,
See,
I love you.
I can't do that with Otto because he probably weighs twice as much as your daughter. So
Well, he liked one of the things that you were saying because he came in the room and his little tail was wagging behind you.
yeah, okay,
So he approved. He approved.
he's in his bed. He's in his bed next to me. I'll get him some FaceTime. Yeah, that's what people really want to see.
So if you're watching, thank you so much for joining us. Bills Talk Live Wednesday night, the podcast. Jenna Cottrell from Rochester, 13 Wham, WIVB's Heather Prusak. Before we get out of here, we're going to do kind of like a little bit of a lightning round. I have some final questions that I want to fit in for you guys too, but we've already gone an hour. This has been really
I'm
easy.
sorry that
Wow.
we've really gone long on some of these topics.
No, that's good. I sometimes you get to this part of the show and you're like, we still got 20 minutes to fill. Cause I like this to be about an hour for the weekly main podcast, but no, we've been flying by. So if you have any questions, put them in here. I'll try to get them. And we have this cool feature where we can put it on the screen. So somebody ask a question, so I can put one question on the screen because I just like doing it. But before we get to those, all right, rapid fire. So answer and then maybe a couple sentences, but we'll kind of fly through this. Favorite Bills player you've covered? Heather, start.
Heather, you want to start?
I'll say Lorenzo Alexander. I know it's a cliche answer, but he's always so respectful to the media. He said things, he gave thoughtful answers, always willing to talk out there in the community. Just I know it's cliche and whatever, but he's just such a stand-up guy, classy guy. So
Heather, I said I knew it because that's mine too. Like I talk to most media people. Lorenzo's great. Like you said, he's thoughtful and he's so patient. Like you could be under deadline and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You go to Lorenzo, he will give you a great answer. Yeah. And he's just really excited for him in his next chapter. And I know the Bills are going to definitely miss that leadership that he brought.
I would definitely say Lorenzo too, but just not to continue here with that trend. I think we could all say Lorenzo because let's be honest. I mean, he was like the godfather of the locker room. I mean, when he did his weekly media obligation, it was appointment listening. Everybody kind of made their way over to Lorenzo talking. If a camera kind of popped their camera in front of Lorenzo, all of a sudden you would see all these little reporters scurrying over because you don't want to miss what Lorenzo's going to say. But I will say a guy that really surprised me last year, and listen, a little bias here. He's a huge MMA guy. We connected on that. But John Feliciano.
Oh, yeah.
I really love every time you go talk to him. He's super real with, what he tells you. Like, every time I talk to him, I felt like there wasn't any coach speak or,
fakeness.
Yeah, just everything was super real. And I think that you can do that. And there was no story last year that John Feliciano came out with or that was associated where it was something that, the Bills probably didn't like. You can be like that. And I know that Shawn has built a culture and it's interesting. I think as we move along in the culture, a lot of people will get a lot more leeway. I think you'll see Josh maybe start to grow in a lot of his interviews because they're learning. I mean, a lot of these guys are super young. This team has been super young for the last 2 years. And I think that, guys like John Feliciano, Shawn mentioned them in the call today. They have that kind of impact. And I think that those are fun guys to have in the room. A young guy that I'm a big fan of too, who's on the podcast, Tommy Sweeney. He's always I feel bad for him because we're always just where we sit. We're just kind of thrown as a group at him and Karen Johnson and Kirk Coleman last year. Yeah. So that's where I'll be.
I have a question. Who do you guys think, you mentioned like Tommy and John Feliciano, who do you guys think that this year will be a guy that you might gravitate toward talking to, or the guy that kind of will fill that Lorenzo Alexander type of media role?
I'll say, I honestly, and he kind of did it last year and, the year before, but I think Micah Hyde's still going to continue to be a guy like that.
Yep.
Am I just like,
oh no, he's great.
I feel like Micah would give the answer. Like he would when I say challenge, I mean like in a good way. He'd be like, "Well,
Yeah.
what's your question?" Like he
Yeah.
wants
What
you
do
to
you
have.
mean by that? Yeah.
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 And I think he would also give you. Also, Lee Smith is very funny in terms of just some of the stuff he would say as like the grizzled veteran. But yeah, I think I was just curious what you guys thought.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say for the newer guys coming in, I think Zach Moss is going to be interesting. He's already made some sound bites with the making business decisions for defenders. I could see him being an interesting guy in the locker room. And then I'm going to jump back real quick to that previous question. Before I was with New York Upstate or even Scout.com, I was writing for all these little smaller sites where really there was no way to get into the locker room or anything like that. And one player who always went above and beyond was Arthur Moat. So I'm going to give a little shout out to Arthur Moat. He always would get back to me and help me with things. So yeah.
Nice.
Very
Nice.
cool. I forgot who. My who I think is going to take the Lorenzo mantle as the must get to interview is Cole Beasley. Every time I talk to him, he gives me something every single time, and he's another guy that's super real. And I think we talked towards the end of the season, and we had just developed like I could kind of read him when he wants to talk and when he doesn't. That's a big part of our job. Like if you catch somebody, like that's one thing in my first year on the beat. I think I caught a lot of people at the wrong time. I remember an instance with Zay Jones where I just walked into just not a good moment to talk to Zay Jones. And you learn to read those moments over the course of your time.
When they want to talk.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So we got that. This is for all of us, but Heather and Jenna, advice for young female journalists looking to cover sports, because I think a lot of times like trying to, break into this business period is daunting. But at times I think for women without the proper, mentors to kind of guide them through this process, it can be tough. So what would be, if somebody came to you and said, how do I get to where you are? What advice would you give them?
You want to start first, John?
Yeah, sure. I think don't get discouraged. Like, I think that's a huge portion of it is just, especially, I know like for me in college, like Heather was a badass. She was out there doing stuff with Citrus TV. Like I said, I was too scared to do that. I was afraid of failing and like looking bad. But I think people also have to understand that like, some people are talented at this. Absolutely. But just because they're talented doesn't mean they're good. You have to work at it too. And I think that was something that was really important, is just practice. How important practice is, how important it is to find people that you think are good and pick apart what makes them good. Why do I like them? Maybe reach out to them. Just analyze yourself, your work, but also know that just because you're here now doesn't mean you can't get to someplace else. And I think that was really important for me to learn, is just, it's not always going to be perfect, but I have a voice and there's a reason why I want to do what I want to do. And I think along the way, my voice has gotten stronger because of practice and of learning and of growing. And I think just, it's really easy to be super hard on yourself, especially in this business, because you're so exposed. And, as a woman, you're going to get comments, unfortunately, about the way you look or the way you dress, or why do you want to talk about sports, or all of those things. But if you just stay true to your course and say, I can do this, then, and you keep working and you keep learning, then I think that there's absolutely a career path for any woman and any journalist, really.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jenna said. I think, especially as a woman, Jenna just touched on it, the comments that we'll get that, men don't have to necessarily deal with. I think that some of my advice for young women wanting to break into the industry is it's easier said than done, but the quicker you can develop a thick skin, the better you're going to be. And it's something that I struggle with. Jenna, I'm sure that it's, stuff that we're still learning how to deal with. But I think that the quicker you can shrug some of the pettiness off and kind of ignore it. Well, I don't want to say ignore it, because there are times I think you kind of have to pick and choose your spots when to speak out about certain things, because, I'll maybe get a comment and I'll quote tweet it because I want to make a point, and people are like, well, just ignore the trolls. It's like, well, like there's a time and a place to say something and to speak out. And if it's something petty or stupid, yeah, sure, ignore it or just block them. But I do think that there are certain times to kind of, like what we were talking about, earlier, to speak out and educate people. So I think developing a thick skin, I think networking for women, young women, is great. And I also think too, for young women is, not to get caught up in comparing yourself to other women, because I do it so much where I get so self-conscious and I'm like, well, this person is, this age and they're only a year older than me and they're at, this regional network, and this woman's only 2 years older than me and I'm going to be that age soon and I'm here and I'm there and blah, blah, blah. And I think, not comparing yourself to people and not getting jealous, but rather instead of getting jealous, channeling that to learn from those people. And so I think that, and also just don't be intimidated by the men around you, because it can be very intimidating being in a, male dominated industry and walking into a room full of pretty much, men reporters. Yes, it can be very intimidating, but don't be intimidated and just, wear your confidence as a badge of honor. That's what I'll say.
And jumping off one of the Heather's points that I think is, all of them obviously apply. I just think, like, especially because there's such few women in the industry, I feel like it's inherent that you do compare yourself to others. And I think the biggest lesson that I've ever learned, and something I honestly have to remind myself very much on the daily, is like, you are running your own race. Like, there are factors going on in your life. Like, I was so sad when I got sick because I was like career-wise, that's going to set me back. I was so bummed. And then I realized, like, that's just the way it's going to be for me.
For those people that don't know, what were you sick with?
Oh, I had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had cancer. I'm in remission now. All good. All set. Thank you. But, it's so, like, Heather, it's so easy to compare yourself to others. And it's just blocking that out and being like, okay, you know what? I can, it's a long race. You know what I mean? Like, it's just because someone's there faster than you doesn't mean they're going to stay there, and doesn't mean you can't catch up and blow by and all of that stuff.
And it doesn't mean they're happy, so,
also
it's so hard, but, yep.
But Heather, you kind of already touched upon it, but does it ever feel like it's a boys' club in football media land? And then has that ever led to any negative experiences?
Yeah, it for sure. It for sure. It definitely does. I mean, even something as simple as, like, earlier today, somebody that I follow tweeted, like, oh, I missed Shawn McDermott's presser today. Anybody know, like, any media write about some stuff that I can look at? And then, like, this guy replied and was like, oh, just go to any of the guys' timeline, any guy that covers the team's timelines or something. And it's like, women we cover the team too. It's just like little things like that. That is like, it's just, it's frustrating. And also too, like, it's tough too. And I've said this before, it's tough too as a woman to, when you're trying to build relationships with these players and these male players and coaches, and you're trying, you're being professional, you're trying to get to know them, you're trying to build sources and find out information. It's so hard because anything you do or say could possibly be construed and, twisted. And so it's like, it's hard because you're trying to build sources and relationship while also making sure that they don't take something the wrong way or think, oh, you're being overly friendly and blah, blah, blah. And so that's another challenge. So that's another way where, the boys club, it's hard that way too. So yes, long answer, yes, it does feel like a boys club sometimes. Yes.
It's so true. And, like, it's a very fine line. Obviously, it's not a fine line. It's not. It's just being friendly as a human being, and people reading way too far into it, which that's always tricky to navigate. But I will say, I personally feel like the most it's a boys club is, I feel like the media room in general has, like, shifted. There's more women now, which obviously love to see that. Yeah. I feel like on the sidelines, that is the ultimate boys club. Like, I know Heather and I will use our video cameras. We'll shoot the game sometimes. And I can't tell you how many times someone has looked at me and be like, are you shooting the game?
Camera girl. Camera girl. Camera girl, put me
I'm
on
gonna
TV,
be 30.
camera girl.
Like, I'm not like what the. But I will say it's a situation where I've had someone literally like not one person but multiple people be like, wait, you're shooting the game. It's like
Yes,
yeah.
is that it? Would you like me to spell it out for you? I
But
can write it.
I love that though. Like I'm like, yeah, and I bet you my stuff's gonna look better than you. Like in my head, it really does though, because it's like,
Yeah.
guess what? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm not leaving. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do
Hi,
it.
hello.
And
Even when you
There-
get truck stick on the sidelines, you're not leaving.
Yeah.
Unless there's that. That was
If that doesn't get you to leave, I don't know what.
my mom called and she was like, you need to go. But no, I think a lot of times too, like, so Mike Catalana is my boss, and there's times where I will be his camera person, and people think that's insane. Like we'll be out and they'll be like, no, you guys need to switch, or they'll like make funny jokes about it. But for our job, like we're expected to do everything. We report, we shoot, we anchor, we edit, we all of the above. And like, I don't know, I love that. Like, doubt me, I dare you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I just think that fuels me, and I think it has to fuel the other women in this industry.
It has to.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes it. There's people that come up to me, and I know that they're trying to be genuine when they say, "Hey, you are my favorite female sports anchor or reporter."
How about just favorite?
That's the thing, and I want to be respectful, and I will say, "Thank you, I appreciate that," and then I will follow up and ask, "Why can't I be your favorite sports
Just
anchor?"
in
And the
general.
look on a lot of their faces is they don't even realize like what they're saying. It's two different. Okay, you're a guy, you're a girl.
Yeah.
So, you can't.
It's things that people think are compliments, but they're actually not. Or like, so like you would never hear someone say, "You're my favorite male sports reporter in the market." Like you would never hear somebody say that. Or like what irks me too is when people say, "You do such a good job. You actually know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
Wait, you mean I'm actually qualified to do my job? Thank you so much for saying that. Like, so yeah, it's stuff that people don't understand how they're coming across, and they think it's a compliment, but it's not. So just trying to educate y'all out there.
And I think it's like important to be like, while I appreciate what you're trying to say, at the same point, it's like you got to question it, because you're like, well, why is that the case? Yeah. And I think I will say, like, Heather and I are not pioneers. Like, there are so many women that have come before us, but I think the fact that, there's so many women in sports is amazing. But obviously it proves our experiences on the day-to-day that like things need to grow. And I'm hopeful that will be the case. But it's just, there's the job is different for a female reporter than it is for a male.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm proud of myself for what I've gone through and where I've arrived at, right? But then you listen to that, and you really listen to it, and you realize that there's so many little things that I didn't have to deal with on the come up. You know what I mean? There were tons of things, like you mentioned, like, being kind of self-conscious about your looks. Like, I used to have a UFC show, and my teeth were not the best before I had braces. And I actually literally got braces during my time at the UFC, and I had it when I first came to the thing. And now, my teeth are pretty straight, but that was a self-conscious issue. And that's just like scratching the surface of what you're talking about, what you have to deal with, where you're feeling, where there's the potential to feel inadequate. And what I think is so cool about everything that you just said and the experiences that you've had is that, all that happened, and you're still here, growing and improving and moving up in the world. And
we're not going anywhere.
Exactly. And, as someone with a very empowering wife and a daughter now that we're raising, like I'm very passionate about seeing that, because I want to live in a world where my daughter has those kind of opportunities and feels empowered herself to go out there and chase whatever it is she wants to do. Because guess what? It might be all guys that play NFL football, but this is a sport that I think needs as many different viewpoints and ideas brought to the table because it's so we talk about this 365. If you just heard me and Ryan, who, by the way, I have to say, his bald head is right next to the NY Up logo. So they're contrasting each other so perfectly. But if you just heard us two all year long, 365, how boring would life be? So I just want to say thank you for what you bring to the beat because it's significant. And if you're not following Jenna and Heather and Jenna over at Channel 7, and so I'm going to leave people out. Maddie Glab, who's now with the Bills. There's so many, female reporters that are bringing something significant to the table. Get with it. Get with the times.
Yeah.
2020.
I think
2020, folks.
I think people are. Like, I think people starting to realize, starting to wake up. That's at least my hope.
Mm-hmm. Same.
I have just absolutely destroyed your Wednesday night. We're an hour and 20 into this thing.
Oh yeah, because we've got so much going on.
Where am I going?
Yeah.
That's true.
Sorry, I've got 3 appointments lined up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So before we go, why don't you guys let everybody know where they can find you on social media, the best place to find you. And I know I forgot to do it at the beginning of the show, but definitely want to check out 13 Whams, Buffalo
Plus. BuffaloPlus.com.
There you go. They got a podcast. Dan Fates, Mike Catalana, Jenna Cottrell. I'm thinking Jenna Caleri now because I just said her name a second ago. But go check that out. And why don't you guys both tell everybody, what's coming up and where they can find you.
Perfect. Heather, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I can follow me on Twitter at Prusak, AJPRUSAK. That's my Twitter. I'm at Facebook, my professional Facebook, Facebook.com/Heather Prusak and then the number 4. That's where I put, that's where I do all my professional stuff.
Updated.
On Facebook. Yes. And then, I'm on Instagram too. Same thing as my Twitter at Prusak. That's more fun stuff, but I post professional things too. That's more the fun side of my life. A lot of my dog pictures. So if you're looking for the lighter side of me, that's where a lot of my stuff on Instagram is. But we've got tons of content on WIVB.com/sports. Tons of stuff that we posted today from the pressers, and we've even got a lot of Sabre stuff from last week as they wrapped up the season. So lots of good stuff there. Always love to chat. So if you guys want to interact there, I'm there.
Yeah. I'm super original in my Twitter handle. It's at Jenna Cottrell. That's also my Instagram handle, JENNACOTTRELL. So I work at Channel 13. You can check out 13wham.com. You can also check out buffaloplus.com. It's our new website. And then also we do have a YouTube page, Buffalo Plus. Make sure to look that up. It's Mike Catalana, Dan Fates, and myself. And we kind of do, I don't know, we talk about the Bills. We kind of do what you guys do of just like our insight on the team. Where do we think things are going? Coming up later on, we've been talking to some of the college coordinators for the rookies. Zach Moss. It's actually really interesting. Zach Moss's running backs coach at Utah compared him to a former Bill. How is that for a tease? So if you want to check that out. And then, I know like Heather and I, we just appreciate you guys and thanks for having our perspective on, because I think it's a cool conversation to have.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Getting the word out there about what we do and just our perspective on things. So thanks.
I think we could have done 2 episodes, one with each of you, because we had so much to talk about. This will be one of, I hope, many appearances on the podcast. And actually, speaking of teases, the podcast is going to be changing names. And when we launched this thing, we launched it super aggressively and quickly because of the quarantine. I had planned to roll it out, like kind of slow play it towards training camp. But with what was going on, we wanted to launch it now. And so we just came up with a pretty generic name, obviously. But we have a new name. And Mr. Talbot's name is also in there. Like I've been telling you, we've been working on. And it's we're really excited. I think the name encapsulates the fan base. I'll have like a little promo coming out on it soon. But stay tuned for that. And again, thank you so much for listening, everybody joining us in the chat tonight. You guys were great. Find us on all of your podcast networks, Apple, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. Bills Talk with Matt Parrino for now, but stay tuned. We're changing pretty soon. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great night.
Bye. Thank you.
So I got to do this thing, and everybody's still watching. But if I don't let this keep recording, it cuts us off, and then I got to do some kind of generic podcast
Close out,
ending
yeah.
here. So give me one more second, and we're gonna have to